Okay, so this is the first Lunch and Learn for 2019, the pros of probiotics. And I'm here to introduce our esteemed speaker, Jason Tagle.
Ooh, thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. The most complex ecology on Earth lives at the bottom of the ocean. The second most complex ecology lives inside your gut. When I say gut, I'm not talking about a beer gut. I'm talking about your digestive system. Your gut includes all of your digestive organs. It starts at your mouth and ends down south. Your gut is like a factory that processes food. We eat food, and your gut does 4 things. Breaks down food, absorbs nutrients, feeds your cells, and removes waste. Whether or not this process occurs with maximum efficiency depends on the health of your microbiome. Lining the inside of your intestines is a universe of microscopic organisms. This universe is collectively known as the microbiome. Its inhabitants are called microbes. Microbes are living organisms, and there are 3 guarantees in life: death, taxes, and bacteria. We are more bacteria than we are human. For example, you have 10 trillion human cells. Your microbiome has 100 trillion bacterial cells. This bacteria didn't come from nowhere. In our mother's womb, we start out sterile. As we pass through the vaginal canal, we're bathed by our mother's bacteria. This bacteria is essential to health. It's essential to life, which is why we call them probiotic. Probiotic means for life. We form most of our good bacteria during the first 2 years of life, which is why it's important for infant formula to be fortified with probiotics, because mother's milk contains natural probiotics. Breast is best. After 2 years, our microbiome is as unique as our fingerprint, and it serves us in a few ways. Nothing we eat is 100% bioavailable, which means our body can't do anything with chunks of steak and green beans, not directly. It needs the metabolites, or building blocks, from the steak and green beans for its nutrition. Your microbiome breaks down food into usable components. For example, if you eat a food high in zinc, probiotics will extract the zinc from the food and feed it to the zinc receptor sites. You have receptor sites within your gut for all the different nutrients. Different probiotics digest different metabolites. So it's important not only to keep the number of good bacteria high, we also want a strong diversity. Probiotics form your immune system by competing for space with potentially harmful bacteria known as pathogens. Your gut and brain are connected. Every thought and action you have is orchestrated by your central nervous system, which is a massive web of interconnected neurons or chemical messengers in your brain and spinal cord. It's like your internet. Your gut has its own internet called the enteric nervous system. And if you think about why, it makes sense. Imagine having to put mental energy into digesting food or going to the bathroom. It wouldn't make evolutionary sense. So your gut has a mind of its own. Both nervous systems, your enteric and your central nervous system, are connected via the vagus nerve. V-A-G-U-S, not V-E-G-A-S, which means gut health affects emotional health and vice versa. They are inseparable. There's a reason we have sayings like trust your gut. Now that we know probiotics are important, we need to keep them alive. And living things need food. Probiotics feed on glucose, which is the molecular form of sugar. So you're probably thinking, okay, sweet, all I need to do is eat high sugar foods. However, sugar, which is also found in refined white flour, such as bread, tortilla, pasta, gets absorbed into your bloodstream long before it ever reaches your large intestine or colon, where most beneficial bacteria reside. Therefore, you need glucose in complex chains, otherwise known as fiber. Fiber will ferment in your colon by your good bacteria. In other words, it's food for your probiotics. This is why we call them prebiotics. Prebiotics are food for probiotics. Where do we get prebiotics? Vegetables, either raw or cooked. Tubers, such as potatoes, sweet potatoes, or yams. All kinds of fruit, but not fruit juice, which by definition removes the fiber. Whole grains and legumes. The idea is carbohydrates should not be light and fluffy. They should be heavy and coarse. Prebiotics alone might be enough to keep your good bacteria high. But there are lifestyle factors that disrupt the balance of our microbiome. The most common being antibiotics. If you have a bacterial infection, your doctor might prescribe antibiotics, which are effective, but they work like Superman. They defeat the bad guys, but cause a lot of destruction to the city. Likewise, antibiotics wipe out both the good and bad bacteria. Even if you're not on antibiotics, there's antibiotics in our meat supply. Industrial-raised animals live in poor conditions, and when they inevitably get sick, the poor animals are given antibiotics. These antibiotics transfer to you, the consumer, when you consume industrial meat products. I'm not saying you need to be vegan, I'm just saying wild and organic meats are worth it. Chronic stress disrupts your microbiome. Very important to do stress-relieving activities daily. Imbibing typically lowers your good bacteria count. However, red wine with a high polyphenol content has the opposite effect. It raises the ratio of good to bad bacteria. Polyphenols are organic plant compounds found in the skin and seed of grapes. And they act like a fertilizer, which means they promote the growth of beneficial bacteria. Not just any red wine will do. It needs to have 3 features. It needs to be dry, which means it has a low sugar content. It needs to have a high acidity, and it needs to be deep in color. So deep, you can't see through the glass. I'm not going to start reviewing red wines. We're going to save that for our liquid lunch and learn. Main thing you need to know about red wine is the more bitter, the better. Even if you're living optimally, like with any living organism, probiotics naturally decline in vitality with age. So it's a good idea to have a maintenance dose of probiotics daily. The idea behind a maintenance dose for health insurance is like going on a road trip. You want to have your gas tank topped off. And what's a maintenance dose? Between 1 to 20 billion colony-forming units per day. Colony-forming units are the number of viable cells. And this is an enormous range that you can adjust based on your situation. For example, children would be fine with 5 to 10 billion CFUs per day. For adults, I'd recommend 15 billion per day. If you're on a course of antibiotics, you'd want to go for at least 20 billion per day, both during and 1 month after a course of antibiotics. Question is, where can we get these probiotics? Number one, lacto-fermented vegetables, or as I like to say, the power of sour, meaning sauerkraut. Whether you make it yourself or buy it in the store, if you buy it in the store, make sure it's from the refrigerated section. Because if it's not, it means it's pasteurized. Pasteurization extends the shelf life, but kills off some of the beneficial bacteria. If you like spice, kimchi is another option. When it comes to yogurt, the main thing you want to look for is the sugar content. You want to keep that as low as possible because sugar is counterproductive. It feeds candida, which is a fungus. At low levels, candida exists in a harmless yeast form. However, if there's a candida overgrowth, you can get a fungal infection known as candidiasis. So go for the plain yogurts, meaning unflavored, unsweetened. Don't get the low fat, because lower fat means higher sugar. And what I like about yogurt is that it's a vehicle for adding fruits, such as blueberries. Now you have the prebiotics and probiotics in one package. If you're sensitive to dairy, there are also coconut yogurts. You just wouldn't want to have it on the beach like this because yogurts need to be refrigerated. Kefir is sort of like a liquid yogurt. It's a fermented dairy beverage with kefir cultures. This idea of drinking yogurt might not appeal to some people, and there's also coconut kefir, which is something that I started doing. Coconut kefir can have 15 billion CFUs per 2-ounce serving. So what I do is I fill a 2-ounce shot glass. I'll have it first thing in the morning and sometimes during the day. So you might see me taking a shot at the fitness center. This is why. Of course, you've all heard of kombucha, which is a fermented tea. When I first drank kombucha, I couldn't believe people drank this stuff voluntarily. But then it kind of grows on you. As you start to build that beneficial bacteria, you start to get hooked on it. Just like with yogurt, you want to watch the sugar content. Because kombucha is a popular drink, it comes in a lot of flavors. And some of these flavors are almost 50% juice. Therefore, I personally try to shoot for 5 grams of sugar or less per serving. And there are typically 2 servings per bottle. Something to keep in mind with liquid probiotics is the fermentation process produces carbon dioxide, which is a gas. And you'll notice the sediment, which are the cultures, collect at the bottom of the bottle. So you have to swirl it or sometimes shake it in order to mix it into the liquid. If you try to open it right away, it's going to pop open like a bottle of champagne. And I've learned this the hard way. But that's how you know you have a good probiotic, if it's very fizzy. So mix it, let it settle, then open it. Of course, there are other food sources of probiotics, and I will be sending you a list after this talk that you can refer to. What about supplements? Whether it's in capsule or powder form, it might be a good idea to have supplements on hand. Maybe you just don't like the taste of fermented foods. Or if you do global travel, where a number of factors can change your microbiome. It's convenient to have probiotics in a pill form handy. Stick around for Q&A because I will go in more detail on how to choose a probiotic supplement. But I just want you to remember 3 things. Feed your existing probiotics with prebiotics, which you get from fiber-rich foods. Add fermented foods or the power of sour to reach your daily maintenance dose of probiotics, between 1 to 20 billion colony-forming units per day. A cup of sauerkraut might have 3 billion CFUs, just to give you an example. If it's unpasteurized, it can be as high as 5 billion CFU. And use supplements as a backup. Always remember, everything that passes through your digestive system has the ability to improve your health. So remember these words. If you're stuck in a rut, heal your gut. Thank you.